Sakati kaderini nasi mangwana ni Friday. How are you, good people? If you can hear me, you can just show a sign. Hello, guys, if you can hear me.
Good evening, sir.
Hello. If you can hear me, you can just show me a sign. Can you hear me? Cheers. I think let's just do others who join in future.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we are just going to do this 1 hour. I think it's 40 minutes. So psychology of gender and development. I've shared some notes on the group. They are quite more detailed than the ones that I'm having right now. I'm sure if there's someone who is able even to admit people in the waiting room, if it's able. All right. So looking at the aspects of psychology and gender, I think we may start from this portion. Can you see introduction to the psychology of gender and development, right?
Yes.
All right. So psychology of gender and development, it's something quite interesting, especially in the nowadays of gender equality. You know, women of nowadays or people of nowadays, they are quite gender sensitive, if I may say so. So psychology of gender, it's quite more trying to expose such of these issues that arise in gender, as well as gender development as well, how we can be able to exercise which way or gender equity or what, as well as educating people about gender issues. From gender at work, gender at school, gender wherever, even in our society. So we will start to look at the aspects of sex and gender, as well as differences between sex and gender. And then we'll jump to the history of psychology of women in another sense. So in another aspect is we are supposed to understand psychology of gender, just the definition, describe some historical background, as well as some approaches to gender studies. I think we'll touch them some other time. So looking at these two concepts between sex and gender, they look quite familiar, but they may not exercise the same aspect. For instance, sex, according to Marchionis, 1989, sex refers to the division of humanity into biological categories of male and female. In another aspect, coming from Haralambos and Holborn, that is a sociology definition of sex, is defined as the biological differences between men and women. That is their physical characteristics, external genitalia, internal, I don't know how you pronounce this word, gugnitalia, gonads, which are now the organs which produce sex cells, hormonal states, and secondary sex characteristics. So in another manner, they're describing sex, or they're defining sex as more of biological or a division of humanities, of humanity through biological categories. And that is another unfortunate part when it comes to the issues of gender, gender studies, that they want people to be gender sensitive, or gender, to come away from what they call gender binary. Gender binary only refers to men and women, which regards to us versus them. So gender now refers to human traits which are linked by culture to each sex. That's Haralambos in Holborn, 2004. Within a society, males are socialized to be masculine as females, as females are taught to be feminine. So that's another aspect of gender that they say these are human traits which are more by social institutions or culture to some instance. Looking at Walter and Manion, 1996, they also looked into that gender is the difference that sex makes within a society, guiding how we are to think of ourselves, as well as how we interact with others. Social opportunities, occupations, family roles, and prestige allowed males and females. So that's their definition of what? Of gender. That is the difference that sex makes within a society. Now, when it comes now, I think this now involves gender roles, like family roles, prestige allowed between males and females, as well as our social institutions, which comes to family, education, work, and so on. They also what, re-give us an aspect about gender. Are we together? I believe so. So some differentiating between gender from sex. Sex, they say, is inborn. Gender, they say, this starts the moment the sex is known. The moment that they know that you are a boy or a girl, that's when gender starts. Then also is biologically determined. What am I doing again? Oh, technology tries to fight us, but we will never resist. We will resist, actually. Yeah, so sex is biologically determined. Now gender is more socially constructed. Looking at our aspects in society, like coming back to those social expectations, that men are supposed to be masculine, females are supposed to be feminine, as well as in some other sense, they are regarded as weak or inferior to men in those aspects. So that's why they're saying gender is more of socially constructed, because there are some other women who can beat men. But the fact that they are women, they may not be recognized very well. Look at football right now. Women's soccer, nowadays people are advocating about women's soccer. It just depends about how they are advocating, but they're advocating about women's soccer, women's sports, as well as what to call it, other genders also to be involved, not to be gender binary, but also to consider other aspects. So they're trying to come away from a biological perspective, as well as also respecting gender, socially constructed gender aspects. Also, another difference is sex is exclusive to a particular sex and is fixed. It does not change over time. Once born male, always male, and once born female, always female. Now looking at gender, they say it varies within and among cultures. Different individuals and societies give different meanings to maleness and femaleness. If you look at nowadays, what do you call it, those European countries, if you look at those European countries, especially New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, they also, that paternity also. We used to know that at work, when you get pregnant, it's only a woman who goes home. But when it comes to men, they still continue going to work. But some other European countries, in Africa, I don't know when, but I believe it's going to be difficult to be acknowledged. But in some of those European countries, they acknowledge that paternity leave as well. Like if your wife gave birth, you are also allowed for 3 months paid leave, the same as maternal leave. Those are some of the things that people are trying to do what they call gender mainstreaming, or to teach people about gender aspects, as well as to change people's attitudes towards gender-related scenarios, as well as removing ourselves what they say in courts, old ways or patriarchy societies where men are dominated.
Mr. Navanda?
Yes.
Yes, just to add on what you are saying with gender, it was added, I think men are given 1 month now in Namibia currently.
Women.
And women are given 6 months now. So men are now having 1 month to stay at home after the woman is on maternity leave. So we are also privileged to have men that will be staying home, helping the mother 1 month. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Isn't it? Yes, but that is very good. But looking at the gender-related stories using our gender lenses, we will still feel it's unfair, or it still portrays women as weaker than men. Why 1 month to a man? Because they say, I know you recover quickly, you're not that weak, you can come back to work, you see. But now when it comes to women, they say, no, your body, it's something else, and you need to recover, and that other aspect. But it still comes back to that issue of how people still view issues of sex and gender and how they appreciate that aspect. But it's a good move as well. That is the initiation of trying to look at both ways, as well as also trying to balance the equation as well, or trying to include fairness as well as to remove inferiority among women as well. But I believe it will also allow attention to women in regards to serious positions. Another aspect, they say sex is universal, that the organs that determine a male or a female are uniform the world over. For example, the penis for males and then the vagina for females. Now, coming to gender, it attributes expected roles, expected behaviors, and expected responsibilities that go with maleness and femaleness. And also it differs from society to society, community to community, and from individual to individual. Ever since I haven't seen a woman who's paying maintenance, only one lady in my entire life that I know who was paying maintenance, only one. You see. So some of the men, like the patriarch society, if they still see such aspects of expected roles, expected behaviors, still are viable, they still have what do you call it, a difficult time in trying to acknowledge that a human being is a human being when it comes to professionalism, despite of sex-related scenarios. You see, now also coming back to the expected roles, let's come back to our African societies where lobola is involved, and also where, let's say, relationships are more family related than individual based, where much of the say comes from your people than from you. Check nowadays how people are trying to counter such aspects. That's where people sometimes, they can make their decision, both of them, and then, money-related issues. When it comes back to our cultures, money is involved or lobola is involved, and then there are procedures which may be expensive. Looking at nowadays scenarios, we no longer keep cattle everywhere. Now we are now in Vidok, and now our cattle is now cars, and also our land, it's now apartments. Unfortunately, we are renting. You see, now going back way back, people were giving each other land, and they were keeping a lot of cattle either together or various aspects. So they were having what do you call it, aspects of taking their cattle and then pay fully. So that's why women by then they were following expected roles, because why? Men expected roles were fulfilled. If they say bring 1, 2, 3, you bring 1, 2, 3. The other issues of abuse, women, that we hear nowadays, yeah, it happens. We can't rule it out, but it's just people. Wherever there's people, there is chaos. But nowadays, where fairness is coming, majority of you guys who are in here, in reference to females, allow me to be gender binary for now. You are working, you are getting resources of your own, and you're planning on your own. Going backwards, there was this issue of like, we get paid and money goes in one account. And then, the father starts to make decisions and so on. But if you look at it, by then, men were given more money than women, as well as to some extent, they were doing their work to some extent, not to 100%, but to some extent, because we still hear issues now. But now those expected roles are no more fulfilled. Expected behaviors are no more fulfilled. Very good example where you find a man pregnates another lady, then pregnates another one, like 4, 5 kids, and then taking care of none. You see. And then expected responsibilities. Men were expected to take care of family. Nowadays, our sisters are even taking care of their whole family. Now we have even aspects of single mothers. You see now where the aspects of gender and sex become the great conflict. Because when we see each other in the street, we are seeing sex. But when life pushes us now, it pushes what? Gender. It doesn't look at aspects of who's supposed to do which roles. Certain roles are supposed to be fulfilled, where a mother takes care of the family, the father is absent or dead or something else. You see now where those aspects are coming into play. That's why nowadays people are saying, let's also look into this fairness of men and women before we go deeper into just remain or hide behind the word cultural. They say sex is natural and gender is learned. I believe this one is quite specific. So those are some of the aspects in relation to sex and gender in terms of the difference. You have to know them so that whenever you're making your arguments during this module, either assignments or whatever the case, at least you have you know the aspects of gender and sex, because those are the ones which really control your argument. Now, looking at history of the psychology of women, let us take each other back to psychology, the history of psychology, even before we go to history of psychology for women. How many women we have read so far? Despite the kids of what do you call the daughter of Freud, who wrote, and then this other lady, Annie Ainsworth. But when she wrote, actually, she was portraying the psychology of women. She's what they call a neo-psychoanalysis. You know, those people who believed in psychoanalytic analytic theory in viewing things, but they are a little bit, you know, they changed some few aspects. She removed those issues of penis envy, Electra complex or Oedipus complex, such aspects of, like, you know, also a man, you know, a boy child gets angry, you know, with the relationship between a mother and a father, such aspects. She removed that it's somebody who was bitter about life who wrote that. Also some of her arguments. But even if you check, they are quite minor. Go back to science. Some of those things, they are now being reviewed nowadays. That even the formula for NASA, if I'm not mistaken, the one which was jaw-breaking, it was a woman who wrote it. But by then, there were men, you know, that are dominant. And I believe she started to be recognized now. And I even saw a movie. Imagine now, and the movie is not of 1980s, it's of current, I think about 2018, which is quite dangerous. Because if we look at our women nowadays, they act like they are bitter. Yeah, even though to some extent they are bitter in terms of how they were being portrayed. I may not say bitter. Bitter becomes a ruthless word. I will say they are portrayed as bitter. You see, why they are not bitter, but they are, you know, coming out like, no, let's induce fairness, because the expected roles that people are supposed to do, they are not done. We're not represented in certain areas that people are supposed to represent. Looking at all theories of psychology, there were men who were writing. And if they were men, which means the way they were viewing those things, it's more of male dominance. You see now, looking at Piaget history, I mean, what you call developmental psychology, those aspects of about Piaget, the kind of personality, the what versus what, all those aspects. It's people they you know they're viewing it. They were more like manyism, other than like gender neutral. Even though they try to be gender neutral, but some people, they said if when you start personality psychology, you discover that majority of personality theory books, before they write the theory of a person, they first portray the history or background of the person before the theory. Why? They say also background influences what the person wrote. And then now you look at majority of those guys. If I'm not mistaken, Piaget, somebody said he was quite more depressed much of his life. Some, they said Freud was more like a, you know, hardcore guy. And check his theories; they are too direct, you see. But they said Freud is one of the mostly criticized theorists of all times. People criticize his theory, but it's still there. But all these aspects, find very few women are being acknowledged. Look at the background of psychology. Wilhelm Wundt, when he studied psychology. So do you think there were no women at all? Not even one. By then, not even one at all who was writing. But it's because of what? Those aspects of, you know, those that we defined previously of socially constructed, expected roles and responsibilities that each gender or each sex going to gender is attributed to do, which nowadays is quite difficult. There's no way that you will get married and then your husband will say, stay at home. Nowadays, nobody gets paid ultimate salary, unless if you're a politician, well connected, or if you have worked way before, or if God blesses you abundantly. Of course, we will never forget the supernatural force. But nowadays, there's no way that someone can say, just sit at home. You see, if you have an idea of getting income or to develop the homestead or something, even putting it on debate, some they will still subscribe to it, but some they will say, can't you consider even give a less time? I was checking my grandmother who was talking to another brother of mine. Actually, it was a brother who was giving me feedback. Way back, let's say 10, 15 years ago, when our cousins, elder ones, were getting married, our grandmothers were instructing like women should stay at home, take care of the family, visit the farm, be there. But we were surprised actually nowadays when she was saying, no, 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 stop keeping somebody's child at home. If they have better thoughts about how to get more income, let her do that so that we progress as a family. You see now the drastic change which happened. I believe there are quite a number of things that also gave them eyes, which are also aspects. And as well, another issue which is quite common of the mother-in-law and then the daughter-in-law aspect, where you find, even on social media, we are hearing aspects where you find, mother-in-law, you're having a problem with the daughter-in-law. Sometimes it's not like people of this generation are problematic, but, bringing old ways to new ways, at the same time, the new ways are quite violent than old ways. You see chaos starts in between, and then the whole story goes further. Let's go even to religion. How women were portrayed. We are still in the history of psychology of women. Very few women that we read which were more vibrant, except I believe Esther. Yeah, Esther or Ruth, between the two, or if not two of them, who were quite more elevated in the scriptures. But check majority, Jezebel was what? Ruthless. Look at this one, Delilah was something else. Mary Magdalene, check the previous aspects too. Now look at our mother of Jesus. Men first ran away when he heard that she is pregnant. And then later, another man, if we come back to the Holy Spirit, how it was portrayed, that's another man who told another man to go back. You see how male dominance was portrayed way. You see how it is. So the history of psychology of women also, some of those aspects like religion, they pushed the people. Hold on. Sorry. Flu and coughing goes hand in hand. So if we look at that, so, such aspects like that, and also some women changing the course of history, even when the other part, which was also explaining about Magdalena, was something different. So we are starting from the religious perspective. Now goes to parliament. Check nowadays, if a woman gets voted like to become a president, the whole world will celebrate. You see, it still portrays women as inferior. Instead of celebrating like, yeah, at last we have a woman, people, they should just celebrate it as another new president coming in. So to remain dignity to that woman. The moment that we start to say, yeah, another woman, it acts like it was a privilege for her to go there or somebody helped her. But some of the times, if you look at it, it was through merit. Honestly speaking, some women are doing better than men. One guy was even explaining that if you want your company to be successful, the CEO should be a woman, but then other guys, let's say, the directors and whatever, if there are 5, there should be 3 men, 2 women, or 4 men, 1 woman. You see, why they're saying so? They're trying to remove the inferiority. So those were the early years now. So now looking at psychology of women, they were trying to come out from the womanless psychology, where women viewed as different from and inferior to men. You see, now if you check another movie of science, I forgot the name of that movie, about a lady who wanted to, I know it's a Jungle Cruise. Yeah, it's a last year move. Check about it. There was a lady who presented some knowledge, but men denounced her to join the scientific community. Later, when another man was involved in her success, you see now where they still portray inferiority. Another man, if not other men were involved, you see now, for that woman to succeed. And then other groups of men were fighting her. But then comes another man who helped her to succeed, which is also unfair, you see, which is also unfair. It still portrays women as inferior. Even if when you show our kids that movie, they will see women as depending on men. But sometimes it's another way around. Also looking at the first generation of women psychologists conducting research to challenge assumptions of inferiority, like the one I referred, Mary Ainsworth, who wrote a theory. She's a neo-psychodynamic or psychoanalytic theorist. Her theory, it's neurotic or neuroticism, something in relation to that. That is another generation of women who were conducting research. But still, look, they are still subscribing to a theory of a man, psychoanalysis, which was another man writing. You see now where the inferiority is still being portrayed, even though people say, let's observe it, but indirectly, it's still being portrayed. Also looking at recent years, beginning of modern feminist movement in the USA. I'm trying to move away from European histories of gender. Of course, but there are quite a lot of aspects about USA and so on and so on and so on about gender feminism, but I want it to be more of a relation to our African aspect. So whatever you research about the history of gender, try to look into our Afrocentric aspects. Before the Prime Minister of Namibia, Meme, who's there now, going back a little bit backwards, check through that aspect. Wherever you put your arguments, rally behind those ones. Beginning of those modern feminist movement in the US, you see, check now where it started. Our cultures are different. You see now, down here, much of our lives are controlled by culture, gender, our culture. Now, the individual societies are the ones which started feminism. You see another problem again for it to be accepted in third world. But still, people are trying so much so that people become less ignorant. So, and also looking at the emergence of psychology of women, like psychology of gender textbooks, psychology of women quarterly, common sex roles, those are quite general textbooks which were in the beginning or in the era where people started writing those books. So nowadays, nearly half of the psychologists in the workforce, also women are there. Looking in Namibia, majority of psychologists and social workers are women. I believe you can agree with me. Judging from even attendance, you see, you find most of them are what? Are women, you see.
Women, it's true, sir.
And even looking at education nowadays, way back, some they said even in America, there was a benchmark for women to study, but not having degrees. Degrees were only meant for men. They'll be like, you're a woman, you have a degree, where will you use it? There are still some companies nowadays which pay men more than women, but at the same position. There are still some companies that I even know. Some are in Namibia, some are very few I know in Zim, and some Islamic communities that are still paying men more than women, but at the same job, you see. But nevertheless, the meeting will end in 10 minutes. I believe you have seen it. Nevertheless, half of the psychologists nowadays are now being represented as women, which is also quite good. Now, also looking at the bias in psychological research, which also continued, most of the participants representative were more of larger population, which also by then was difficult because of what? The gender composition. If you check nowadays, even most of the researches which are being done, people portray share your gender, male or male, female, so that, or some they put other, so that, through participation, they know that how much represented how much as well. And also other sampling limitations when it comes to race, socioeconomic status, sexuality, and disability. You find, let's come back to economic, you find also, by then women were deprived in terms of socioeconomic status, but fortunately nowadays it's now different. Even in Namibia, I've seen quite a lot of women have good cash more than men. Stand at a road, you'll find most women are driving good cars more than men. I don't know if it's a socioeconomic status or women they budget more. I don't know. Or men are taking care of women. Who knows? But if you look at it again, when it comes to a man buying a car for a woman, either the man buys a car which is better than his wife. That will be their thinking. That no, me, I'm supposed to drive a better one. Or in another way, a man will say, no, I'm treating my wife. You see, but the way they are portraying it, still inferiority. That is the difficult part now of gender. The moment that you start to study this module, you become problematic in your societies. So another aspect, bias in psychological research, also issues of statistical significance, interpreting findings, which also share that women or females were quite inferior, inappropriate generalization. Your research was 3/4 male. How can you generalize in the populace where most of the population is covered by women? You see now. And also assumption that presence of gender differences as well as biological causes. Some of those aspects. Some of the themes that are to be looked in when it comes to gender, theme of intersectionality or the diversity of women identities and experiences. Those are some of the themes which are also being portrayed. In this one, it looks as individuals' multiple identities interact with each other to shape the person's experience. Examine diversity with respect to ethnicity, social class, sexual orientation, urbaness, age, and culture. I will start with this Qatar World Cup, which is going to happen in Qatar, which another person is saying it's not a World Cup because Qatar is not a football country. They said if you are in LGBT community, it's fine. But the moment that you start to portray it wearing rainbow pride flags, I mean colors and so on, they say we will deal with you. But pray that police will come first before the mob, which means the society still doesn't what accept. You see. And then looking at the diversity again, in respect to ethnicity, look mostly at what do you call it? At European nationals. When they talk about gender diversity, unfortunately, they don't what do you call it? Respect ethnicity. But even though people are trying to explain about gender awareness in reference to the nowadays world, but the issues of ethnicity, which is also a stumbling block when it comes to diversity, as well as women identities and experiences, which is also limited to ethnicity, social class, orientation, airborness. Another person was explaining about military, that there are certain ranks and certain areas that even though we do gender equality, it won't work. You see, that's what they were viewing according to airborness and demands of the job. And also another thing, gender differences in power, organizational power, interpersonal power, power over like a person or a group, controlling another person, as well as power to empowerment of self and others accomplishing tasks. Organizational power now, the ability to use valuable resources to dominate and control others. Why women are now being said they are bitter? Because they are now having valuable resources to dominate and control others. It was good if it was me, Mr. Mapanda, being rich, and Mr. Ipanda, only two of us being rich against all of you. But now if you guys start to make money, we'll start to say you're sleeping with your boss. You see now, that is what the organizational power we are looking at. Looking at interpersonal power, that ability to influence others, to influence one's partner within a specific relationship. Where people say the child belongs to the father's blood, even though Namibian law says, the child belongs to the mother, but traditionally, spiritually, somehow, how it is portrayed, they say the blood of the father controls the life of the child. Now, that is the ability to influence one's partner. Now, resources have turned and twisted all those aspects. Now, we have a lot of people who have spiritual gifts who explain a lot of things. Now, that interpersonal power is shifting. How it's shifting? Check how women are being portrayed. The moment that you have power, or what do you call it, identity, just depends how you do it. People, they say, yeah, what? You're now, sleeping around. Actually, they'll say you're sleeping around with big people because they're controlling majority of what? Interpersonal power. And most of the men, they get offended when a woman shares. And then power over a person or a group, that is unfortunate. Women, they control other women. I believe we all know that. And also, women dress for other women. Another example, I'll give you an example of my mother-in-law, what she did one day. She came in the dining and then explained that, how am I? Me and the big man, we acknowledge that the dressing is super. But the daughters, they shared what they shared. Do you know who she looked at? She took comments of the daughters, except us, you see. That's actually, so we discussed about it, like women dress for women and so on and so on. But at some point in time, I believe it's not like that. So it's all about what power over. You see now, like influence and peer pressure comes from which group or from which category, and then power to empowerment of self and others to accomplish tasks. Check majority nowadays, that power to empowerment of self. Majority of women, the gender issues in terms of women getting education and so on, trying to induce the theme of gender differences in terms of power so that also women gain the chance. Lastly, social construction of gender, traits, behavior, and roles associated with females and males, not inherent in one sex. This construction of gender, now coming back to our social aspect. Our society explains traits, behavior, and roles shaped by numerous interpersonal, cultural, and societal forces. That is what social construction of gender. That is the aspect, certain themes that we'll also look into, or that will be portrayed in every topic that we discuss about gender. Or when you're making an argument in terms of gender, also look into these themes. So today I believe we may do this one due to my breathing issue. I believe it was quite helpful to a certain extent. I'm not sure if I was recording, but if it was recording, I will throw the video in the group. Any other question, you may text on our WhatsApp group. I will answer you. Any visions, prophecies, or dreams that we had towards these topics?
It was proper say the slide. Will you share the slides? So
Actually,
we go through also.
The slides.
Is it the one you shared already?
The other one that I've sent, actually, it's more detailed than these ones. These ones are quite more summarized, but I will try to share, but forgive me, not now, but I will share these ones.
It's okay, sir.
Yeah,
Because
before next
the
class.
stuff that I summarized is more easier for us than a lot of summary. I'm sorry, sir.
All right.
Okay, thank you for the class.
All right. You have a wonderful time, guys.
You too, sir. Get well soon.
All right. I pray so.
Mhm.